Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm going to do like a live, real-time update, but I think I'll try to make it of little teaching value for any future, and it'll be an example. I listened to uh, some talk radio. I got up at 3:30 today, doing the normal teaching and everything, and then I caught a couple of talk radio shows. One is doing like the best of the best, and he's a local guy, so I'm not going to really listen to. It's fine. He had the chief on, the police chief, and the other one was talking guns. Maybe 30 minutes, different gun laws. And then as I perused all of the media sites, social media, particularly things where I'm going to be informed, I just realized, for the most part, we're driven by entertainment. I think most people know that. The other day, oh, my phone is going off. Look at this thing. Facebook's. Facebook gives me all types of like notices, watch party or this or that or this or that. And it just came on the screen, which is an example. When I redid my Netflix, I had to redo my Netflix channel. Because on Netflix, I'll watch anything like history. I did cover a documentary that was interesting. But when I had to set up my new list, which would be anything like history or Christianity and things of knowledge, philosophy, I had to scroll through so many of the things that really don't matter, to all these other things. So we are somewhat consumed. How would this be of any value for the future? Right now, currently, as of today's date, whatever it happens to be, July, what is it? July 12th, I guess, something like that. Today is a Thursday. It's July 2018. And we're in another discussion in the country. These things never change. But the discussion hinges somewhat upon the next Supreme Court nominee. Will he make it? Will he not make it? The debate is always pretty much the same. Whether it's a conservative or the court's gonna tilt liberal, the media will always have a particular view. Those on the left and the right will always have the same arguments. Nothing really ever changes. The benefit that this, I think, could be, whatever side of the aisle you are on, would be when you make the arguments that you make politically, I make, whoever. Understand that really some of the arguments are nonsensical in this manner. Some recently saying, if you pick a particular Catholic woman or you pick a Christian man or whoever, then the questioning is, will you allow your religious dogma? This came up in one of the conversations. Will you allow religious dogma to influence your decision making? Now, some who are sincere liberals, who claim to be educated, and these are media people, they will approach this by saying, we cannot have people, whether on the Supreme Court or whatever, who are influenced by their religion, their beliefs, or their ethics. Why is that really a nonsensical question, or one that doesn't help in this debate to understand? Because no matter what your view happens to be, maybe your view would be, we want people that would not force their moral values on us. We believe we should have egalitarians. We believe we should have people that maybe do not feel like the imposing of any morality is part of their makeup. Everybody that you pick, even that argument, is based on ethics or religion. You don't have to say, I followed the church of, pluralism. Every argument you're making really is based also on your own ethics. Meaning this, if you say, we don't want a conservative, or we don't want a Christian, or we don't want a Catholic, or if they're going to be nominated for a Supreme Court position, we want to make sure their beliefs do not shape or form any opinions they make. But at the same time, many on that side of the aisle will say, we want a particular person that would follow along with our ethics, our beliefs, or if you can say our religion. How so? To say that we believe in freedom of speech, or freedom of choice, or whatever happens to be, that's an ethic. That's a moral view, and that's a moral opinion. Now, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying that itself is you saying you want somebody that would shape the way they would rule on the court or serve as a president or whatever. You want them to be shaped by your moral belief and ethic. That indeed is one. If you say, no, we are making decisions in our society based on just freedom, and what does that mean to you? Maybe a freedom of a woman's right to choose, or a freedom of whatever. Okay. Do you also want to liberals, to Democrats, would you also want a Supreme Court justice who would uphold our laws that say it is wrong to kill or it is wrong to murder? And I'm not saying, John, you're getting into abortion. No, I'm just saying in general. Would you want a justice to say, we believe that it is indeed wrong to kill a human being? That's a moral ethic, and to be quite frank with you, that's a religious-based one, founded upon the Ten Commandments, before the founding of this country. And you would say, but of course we don't want anybody on the court. Would you want somebody on the court that advocated, like you have particular groups, NAMBLA, North American Man-Boy Love Association. You have particular groups within this country who advocate and say, if I'm a 70-year-old man, why can't I have a fully loving relationship with a 15-year-old boy or 16-year-old boy? They advocate for that. Most liberals and conservatives would say, oh no, that is a sin and that is wrong. Correct. But some liberals would also say that is a sin and that is wrong. And I would say, so therefore, you believe in a moral standard. And you also want justices, presidents, governors to abide by that moral standard. Now you might make the argument back, well, of course we want that. And I agree with you. Yes, we want that to be illegal. Why? Why? The answer that the conservative would give, or those on the right of the aisle, would be because it is morally reprehensible. It is wrong. But what would the answer of someone on the left give? Some say, why is it wrong? In the more extreme view. I'm not tagging every Democrat or liberal with that. But most liberals would indeed say, that's just sinful and it's wrong. And you're indeed right. But you yourself, in much of what you do and say, are also being formed and shaped by a religious or moral ethic that does indeed find its foundations in Scripture and the Judeo-Christian ethic. And I would just, to make the informed argument here, it's to educate you and me. It's to understand that some of the thinking that goes on in the debates that we have ad infinitum, because this will go on again in another 10 years. That's why I said hopefully I'll just make it where it'll be profitable. So in the debates that we have in this country, in the debates that we have in the areas of thinking or philosophy, or whatever you want to call it, understand that everybody is forming their opinions, how they rule, how they legislate, how they do anything, by some moral ethic, or at least an ethic. And if you say, one of the profitable things I caught on Netflix was, I forget now the title of it, but it started covering the history, 1800s. And it was very well done. I said, oh, good, I'll watch that. But it talked about Marx and Nietzsche, and they're going to get into Freud, all famous philosophers who I've taught on over the years. And it's interesting, I know some Christians might not be familiar with it, but when Marx had a religious upbringing, was going to, study to be in ministry and all, and then his thinking was not in line with the normal Christian view, but yet they were having questions. And I didn't realize he was influenced by Hegel, which happens to be another philosopher in another thing of my studying. I'm going through Hegel again. But Hegel is known, George Hegel. Most of the times you just know him as Hegel. And he's known as a philosopher, but look, he played a major role in Christian thought, in theology, very influential. And he had, what we refer to as the higher critics. But it's interesting because some of these other thinkers were becoming influenced by, these are different views. And when Nietzsche went, and I taught Nietzsche in the past, Nietzsche is known for the famous phrase, God is dead. God is dead. But understand something. Of course, we don't agree with Nietzsche. We refute Nietzsche. But that statement, it was actually a critique of the trend that was taking place. Now, you're talking the 1800s. There was like an experiment to say, let's get rid of these moral foundations, something that I'm discussing right now. And so in the thinking of that time, they said, how about we just get rid of that? Now, Freud is going to come up next in that little documentary I'm watching. But what Nietzsche said was, God is dead, and we have killed him. It was almost a critique, because what he was saying wasn't as anti-Christian as it sounds. He was saying many of the new thinkers and the Enlightenment, and I'm not against the Enlightenment, said, but you have tried to lay a foundation that says we can have a society and a world without God, and some said without morals, which would be Freud. And he said, now when you take that underpinning of ethics and moral out, you have nothing. And Nietzsche's critique, the famous one that I just talked about, was actually a criticism, in a way, you could take it that way, of what was taking place. When we recently celebrated our independence, but the American Revolution, which took place just a few years before the French Revolution, many mistake historically that they were sort of like the same things. And Thomas Jefferson and others, they were kind of like supporters in the early on of the French Revolution. But the French Revolution was different. The American Revolution was, you had a lot of, you had deists and Christians who said the history of coming to this country, which I've covered before. And they said, we're breaking away in essence from British colonial rule for various reasons. Those of you that know history know why. But the French Revolution was the embracing of this new philosophy, if you will, the one I just discussed about Nietzsche. They said, let's break away from the church, or all Christian value and morals. You see, they were espousing a nihilism, if you will. Let's get rid of all of that. It was different. French Revolution was a lot different. It was kind of saying, we're going to do what we want to do. No more being governed or ruled by moral or ethics. And all of my liberal friends, and all in this debate, hopefully this was a little different than what I was listening to on talk radio, or listening to about the guns, or listening to, or the whole social media minefield, where there's so much worth, whether you are liberal or whether you're conservative. Everyone is making their decisions and choices based upon some type of religion. Some type of, you might not see it as a religion, but whatever view you hold to, whatever ethic you have come to believe as you matured in your life, you are indeed imposing moral values as well. And the example I just gave you in this little talk was most of you who talk about freedom of choice to do anything that we want to do, people should be able to have the choice of free. Most of you would tell that 70-year-old man who, or the NAMBLA advocates, most of you would say to them, no, we'll never legalize a 70-year-old man, if you will. This is only an example I'm using because this is one that usually works. But most of you would say it's just wrong for a 70-year-old man to have a consenting sexual relationship with a 15 or 14-year-old boy. And you would say, well, John, we believe it's wrong because of the age of consent and all. That's immoral. Don't you get it? That's an ethic. You too are shaped by some type of a value system, whether you acknowledge it or not. And I guess I'll end with the quote that I gave already from Nietzsche. Because Nietzsche said, when he said, God is dead. Now, he's not dead. He said, and we have killed him. That was his critique of some of the nihilistic thinking. Later on, you had the Jean-Paul Sartre and the Camus and others who had those questions. So during this Supreme Court argument that will take place in this country over Kavanaugh, or during one in another 10 years, just don't forget that. You two are advocating and arguing and fighting from some moral ethic. And so don't say to the other side of the aisle, you're trying to put people in that will make decisions based on morals and ethics. You too are trying to do that. You too are trying to do that. It's not a debate on will any of these people be influenced by their morals. It's just a debate on whose morals that's going to be. Okay?